about the Holocaust that's happening in our country. So for
Say a Holocaust again, you're going to have a problem with me because, again, my family died in that, remember?
Then let's dive right into that. So there's a Holocaust happening in our country of 1 million abortions a year of our fellow countrymen
That's your
being
offensive
slaughtered.
words.
Now pay attention to how dismissive this man was about all of our black children and Latino children being killed. He cares about his people that was killed in the Holocaust, but he says don't compare, even though more black children was killed by the United States, about 10 times more than Jewish people who died in the Holocaust.
So the Holocaust that's occurring, administered by Planned Parenthood, has a disproportionate impact in the black community. In Texas, 70% of all abortions are minorities and 37% of all abortions are blacks. Why are you okay with that?
Why are you okay with dictating what the black community should do?
What's strange and evil about the statement that he just made is the fact that we didn't put Planned Parenthood in our neighborhood. It was planned by your people, your government. That's not a decision that we consciously made.
One of the biggest talking points from abortion advocates is that stripping Planned Parenthood of its $500 million federal dollars would especially hurt minority women. Here are some examples where we see that idea being promoted. Ebony Magazine recently ran a piece titled "Trump Attacks on Planned Parenthood Endangers Black Women." And R&B singer Mary J. Blige did a fundraising interview last week for the abortion giant, praising Planned Parenthood for its presence in the black community. Here is a telling statistic: nearly 80% of Planned Parenthood's abortion centers are within walking distance to black or Hispanic communities.
Now Charlie Kirk should decide what the black community does?
Actually, I want more black people. Do you want less or
You
more
should
black
tell
people?
them how many babies they should have?
I want to protect all black babies.
Except with funding.
So here's the record.
Except with helping them have easier lives.
You want less
or
black
helping
children?
Lift.
I want more black children.
No,
that would be a racist position.
Oh, no, you're the racist position. I want the exact number of black children that the black communities decide that they want and black mothers decide they want to give birth to, and not force them to do so, and especially not force them to do so and then not provide any of the funding necessary to lift them up out of oftentimes poverty situations. Oftentimes you are forcing people to not only then give birth to babies they don't want, but then you're sliding them further into poverty. It costs about $1 million over the course of a lifetime of a child to raise a child.
Planned Parenthood is the largest single provider of reproductive health services, including abortions in the United States. In their 2014 annual report, they reported seeing over 2.5 million patients, 4 million clinical visits, 9.5 million discrete services, including 324,000 abortions. And those 324,000 abortions, about 95% of them are Latin or so-called Negroes. Now, this doubled with the police attack on the black community and then putting us against each other equals a war declared on the black community, and the Latin one for that matter. I'm confused because you guys say you don't have money for reparations, but yet you got these stimulus checks. You say you're broke, but you got $1.3 billion a year to spend on making sure our babies die. Wouldn't that money serve better you giving it to us and we decide what we do with it?
It's easy for you to say you're a trust fund baby who was born rich. It's easy for you to say when you've never had to struggle for money. These people are born in difficult circumstances.
Difficult circumstances that your people created. Or should I say your government? But at this time, your people as a whole have to take on the responsibility and the burden, and yes, the curses that come with how you done the black people in America. You put us in slavery. You burnt down Black Wall Street. You owe us reparations, but you serve us death.
They get pregnant accidentally or at the hands of an abuser, the hands of a rapist, the hands of a mistake when they were 16. Maybe it's their third child and their husband and them had sex and accidentally got pregnant, and you're forcing them to have it and sticking them further and further in poverty with no effort and no funding to help lift them out of that. But you care so much about babies that you think are dolphins.
So what percentage of abortions are rape? That are attributed to rape?
Do you not think rape exists?
I do. What percentage of abortions are attributed to rape?
I don't know, but any of them is too
No,
many.
Since you're a subject matter expert,
any pregnancy
what,
due to
what
rape is
percentage
too
of
many.
abortions are attributable to rape?
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers, Sway.
Kanye.
I've been doing this more than you.
Doing what
You
more
ain't
than
got.
me? Come on, chill out.
You
bro.
ain't got the
Kanye,
answers.
relax.
You ain't got the
Bro,
answers.
I'm asking you
You
a
ain't been doing
question.
the education.
Bro,
You ain't been doing the education.
Kanye, calm down.
You don't have the answer.
I don't know the answer to that.
What is the number one reason given for abortion in America?
Did you know that 1 in 4?
Answer the question.
The number one reason given for
abortion
is they are not ready to have a child and can't do it.
So you're okay. I just want to make sure the moral position. Not a child unless it's born, even though it can feel, even though it can breathe, even though it has a heartbeat.
Can't
has
feel
eyelids.
and can't breathe.
No, we already went through this, all right?
We did.
So
Can't feel and can't
you're
breathe.
entitled to your own opinion, not to your own facts.
Correct. You too.
You are taking the anti-science position.
No.
That from as early as 12 weeks and certainly by 20 weeks, an unborn child can feel pain. And by 10 weeks after conception, the child can make bodily movements. Electrical brain activity can be detected to 6 or 7 weeks.
I've never denied they are not growing into becoming human beings.
But what percentage of abortions do you think are attributable when people say, I got it because I was raped? What percentage?
I bet it's a pretty low percentage.
Yes, less than 1%.
Yes, but that's 1 out of 100.
So most are abortions out of convenience.
But convenience is a word you use to frame it as somebody being irresponsible. Not being ready to bring a child into this world is not convenience, it's smart family planning.
Smart family thinking, huh? It's smart family thinking. The smart move would have been, if you're not ready to have a child, you don't lay yourself down, you spread your legs to have a child. You don't go and lay in somebody to spread their legs. You don't do that if you're not ready for a child.
That you're against Planned Parenthood. You're for forced parenthood. You're not for.
Let me ask you a question.
You're not for life. You're for forced birth.
The rape question aside.
Well, why the rape question aside?
Because it's such a small percentage.
No, but you keep taking these slices that you don't want to deal
1%.
with and throwing them away.
Since you did some images, let me ask you. One second.
So when a child is born or when a child is going to be born and risk the life of the mother, you say that's so rare it doesn't count. When someone is raped, that's so rare it doesn't count. 1 in 100 times though happens.
Well,
so
it certainly
why,
counts. I'm just
why
asking.
Why do you not push for legislation that has exceptions for rape and incest? Why?
Well, because it's just equal to human life, and I'll prove it to you.
It's equal to human life?
So which one of these, I have 2 pictures.
Yep.
One of these babies was conceived in rape. One of these babies was conceived in a consensual relationship. Which one's which?
You know why obviously I don't know the answer to that?
Because they're both human beings.
No.
To discuss what defunding the abortion giant would really mean for minority women, we are joined by this week's expert panel. Alfonso Aguilar is president of the Latino Partnership for Conservative Principles. Gloria Purvis is co-host of EWTN's own Morning Glory radio show and chairperson of Black Catholics United for Life. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Alfonso, you wrote an op-ed with a stunning statistic that ran in the Miami Herald. 64% of all Latino deaths in 2009 came from abortion. Can you expand on that?
Well, you know, I like to choose my words carefully, but what's happening in the African American community, in the Hispanic community, is a real Holocaust. And if you look at the statistics, 52% of all abortions in America are performed on Latino and African American women.
This should be alarming and troubling to you. This should make you upset. A wise man will be upset with his people being preyed on, his people in poverty, his people being oppressed, and his children being slaughtered.
And this is really concerning. Planned Parenthood is targeting our women. As you mentioned in the intro, 80% of their clinics are in our communities, and that's not by accident. And look, their roots, the roots of philosophical roots of Planned Parenthood goes back to Margaret Sanger and the eugenics movement. This idea that you do away with poverty by doing away with the poor. Do away with poverty by doing away with the poor. This idea that you do away with poverty by doing away with the poor. And so this is sad, and we're not talking enough about it in our community. Yeah. And I think that's part of what we have to do, start raising awareness of what's going on in our community.
Gloria, you also have said that the proximity of these Planned Parenthood abortion centers to Black and Hispanic communities is not accidental. What do you mean by that?
It is not accidental when you look at Margaret Sanger's Negro Project, which she started in Harlem with the express intent of putting birth control in the hands of African American women so that they would stop having babies. And what she did in the Negro Project was she sought out the black minister.
Same priest that teach the Bible, preach the Bible, but not do a blessed thing the Bible tells you to do.
To go out and put this message out in the community, because she knew if she went to speak, she would be met with lots of suspicion. And thankfully, people in the community were suspicious of this plan to space births. They saw it as a way to eradicate the community. And of course, the Catholic Church, with her constant teaching, was there to say this is wrong.
And it's interesting because they do recruit African-American activists or Latino activists to go after our women.
And R&B singer Mary J. Blige did a fundraising interview last week for the abortion giant, praising Planned Parenthood for its presence in the black community.
This is why we can't trust the celebrities, the activists, because they work for white supremacy. They get paid to betray us, and y'all still don't believe it, but y'all waking up now.
But when you look at least in the Hispanic community, the majority, poll after poll shows that the majority of Hispanics are against abortion. They feel it's morally wrong. And if you look at the polls in Latin America, those numbers are even higher. 35% of the Latino population is foreign-born. They come from very socially conservative countries. And so they really oppose abortion. So why are these numbers so high in the community?
Right.
It's because they have an aggressive effort, Planned Parenthood and other organizations, to target our community.
Every newborn Hebrew man-child shall die.
So let it be written. So let it be done.
So speaks Ramesses I.
And sadly, they target the poor, sometimes many women in despair. They propose abortion as an alternative, as something that is normal. It's just a medical procedure, and they don't mention the psychological impact it has on women. In many cases, these women end up having abortions knowing morally that it's wrong. And that has a terrible impact in their lives. So this is really disturbing. In the Hispanic community, I'm a little bit frustrated because I hear a lot of Hispanic organizations talking about immigration, which is a legitimate issue, talking about the dignity of immigrants. But what about the unborn? When it comes to the dignity of Hispanic children, of Hispanic unborn children, there's silence.
Every newborn Hebrew man-child shall die.
So let it be written. So let it be done.
So speaks Ramesses I.
And it's really concerning.
Well, same here within the black community. It's not like we're an abortion-loving community. In fact, you see groups like, initially Black Lives Matter was about addressing what they saw as police brutality and that black life should be cherished. Yet somehow that message doesn't translate through to the black life in the womb.
Every newborn Hebrew man-child shall die.
So let it be written. So let it be done.
So speaks Ramesses I.
And so you see this great disconnect. Like, why does it have to stop once it's in the womb? And I will say, just from personal experience, going to a doctor, being told I had a high-risk pregnancy and being pressured into aborting, which I didn't do because the doctor didn't know not only was I married, I had insurance, I had a job, I also had Jesus.
See, that's the difference. That's the difference between the black community, the Latin community, the Israelite community, and other communities. We have faith. We believe in the anointed. We believe in the Most High. Now, a lot of you will get mad because she said Jesus. Don't be simple. She probably just hasn't learned the true name. But we're being governed by a godless, faithless people who exalt themselves as God in their own mind.
Which take away any one of those things or none of those things, and a woman would feel tremendous pressure and fear to abort. But what we need to do is go out and point out, look, killing the poor does not solve poverty. It simply does not. It is not helping black women to kill an innocent member of the family. We have the opportunity in our communities through defunding Planned Parenthood to break the tie, number one, a habit of people going to those death centers in their community and sending them to real centers of whole care in their communities, these federally qualified health centers that actually deal with the real health issues that black women face. Correct. Diabetes, heart disease, HIV and AIDS, mental health issues. Planned Parenthood does not provide any of that. And they can also take care of any pap smears and things like that at these federally qualified health centers. And they can take the whole family there. And guess what? The whole family comes back. No one dies by going to these health centers.
That's correct.
Abortion is not health care.
Abortion is not health care. And I'm hoping that by defunding Planned Parenthood and by what Mr. Aguilar and I do, that we further break that tie in people's minds.
But we need more awareness. I mean, we see, for example, the Hispanic media. Every day they lead with a story on television about immigration, but there's no mention about the high rates of abortion in the Hispanic community. So we're looking at ways to make this a national issue. And perhaps the time has come for communities of color to come together, to lead the way and educate our policymakers. But because it's not only the community, sometimes our own policymakers don't know about the staggering rates of abortion in our communities and make it they want to make it, they want to talk about race. Well, let's talk about the rates of abortion in the Hispanic community, in the African American community.
And let's talk about these stunning statistics. Thank you both. Hope to have you both back here again soon.
Thank
you for having us.
The head of Planned Parenthood says the organization must confront the background of founder Margaret Sanger and her ties to both white supremacy and eugenics. In an opinion piece in the New York Times over the weekend, Alexis McGill Johnson said Sanger will remain influential in the organization, but added, quote, "As we tell the history of Planned Parenthood's founding, we must fully take responsibility for the harm that Sanger caused to generations of people with disabilities and Black, Latino, Asian American, and Indigenous people." Joining us now is Reverend Dean Nelson, Executive Director of Human Coalition Action. Reverend Nelson, welcome back. Great to see you. First off, what was your reaction when you read that article? What did you think? And its admission by the head of Planned Parenthood.
You know, on the one hand, I was shocked because for decades, many pro-life leaders have been decrying the eugenic practices of its founder, Margaret Sanger. But I was happy to see that they acknowledged the reality of what their history is. But at the same time, I know quite honestly that the real problem is you cannot acknowledge that history without also acknowledging the fact that Planned Parenthood strategically has placed 80% of their surgical abortion facilities in minority communities.
Yeah, and I know that you've been quite vocal about Margaret Sanger, as you mentioned, many pro-life organizations as well. What role do you think that played, if any, in getting Planned Parenthood to come to grips, so to speak, with their founder's history? And why do you think they spoke up now?
You know, that's a great question. I do believe that the effort that we did last year with over 120 Black leaders signing on to a document calling for Planned Parenthood to deal with its racist past. I'm not certain why right now. I know that there's continued pressure within this, Black Lives Matter, moment in America. So I believe that there's a lot of pressure that they're receiving. But the reality is that Planned Parenthood, it should not continue to operate as they have. Their name suggests that they parent, but they don't empower women to parent. What they do is they sell abortions. And we want to help those around the country to know that there are better alternatives, like what we do at Human Coalition by providing free services to women who find themselves in this difficult situation.
And Reverend, for those who may not be all that familiar, can you talk a little bit more about Margaret Sanger?
Sure. Many people may not know, at the beginning of the 1900s, Margaret Sanger began to open up birth control facilities, particularly in New York City. As the organization would grow, it would become, the name of it would ultimately become Planned Parenthood. Some people are unaware that in 1939 she wrote a letter to Clarence Gamble of the Procter and Gamble fortune, stating that we don't want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And she would use a strategy that they would refer to as the Negro Project, where they would appeal to blacks through ministers to try to help encourage them to reduce their numbers. And so what we're trying to do is to bring light to the fact that Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion provider in the country. And while nationally abortion numbers continue to decrease, Planned Parenthood's abortion numbers continue to increase because it's part of their business model. And Margaret Sanger is the founder of this organization.
And Reverend, what's next for the pro-life movement to raise even more awareness about Planned Parenthood?
Yeah, what we are working on in cities across the country with other pro-life organizations is not just decrying the real truth about Planned Parenthood, but also elevating solutions. In the state of Texas, for instance, we are pushing legislation like EMMA, which is Every Mother Matters Act, and we would love to see these type of alternatives that are embraced by Republicans and by Democrats in certain states to really provide real solutions. 75% of the women that we engage with say that they would choose life if their circumstances were different. And so we're trying to elevate legislation and ideas that provide real alternatives for women, and that's what Human Coalition does day in and day out with over 100,000 women that we will engage each year.
Reverend, we have probably about 30 seconds left, not a whole lot of time, but wondering if you have any final thoughts or anything that you feel is important for our viewers to know.
We just want them to remember that Planned Parenthood is not an organization that is focused on parenting. They don't empower women to do that. What they do is they sell abortions, and we want to encourage people of all goodwill and faith to help us to get that message out, whether it's in Black, Latino, or white communities, that there are other alternatives for women who are facing these difficult challenges of abortion. And so we want people to recognize that, and they can feel free to visit us at Human Coalition's website to find out more information.
Reverend, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for what you do. We appreciate it. Reverend D. Nelson, Executive Director of Human Coalition Action. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. God bless you.